It's been 30 years or more since they opened up the store. From the gang that's gone before to those who'll be yet to come, we're here to say, play on Monterey.
Program.
As jazz fans streamed into the fairgrounds for the 34th annual Monterey Jazz Festival, the KJAZ Festival Network prepared to go on the air, broadcasting the entire event live for the very first time in history.
Often we won't even be paying any attention to what's happening on stage. We'll be busy hustling the next interview or taking care of something technical or whatever, and just make it back to the booth in time to do the back announce. I've seen it happen many, many times. In the meantime, our listeners have just spent 40 minutes of involvement with something. So
the KJAZ Festival Network operated out of a tiny makeshift announce booth perched above the arena's backstage and an RV in which furnishings were removed to make room for a 40-channel audio mixer. KJAZ remote crews recorded performances at the Garden Stage and nightclub, while roving KJAZ announcers interviewed artists wherever they could. KJAZ hosted a kickoff party for listeners and the press at the beautiful Monterey Aquarium. Madeline Eastman, who performed at the nightclub on Saturday night, entertained the KJAZ guests. KJAZ moved almost its entire operation to Monterey in order to broadcast the festival from the first moment to the last, including not only the performances in the main arena, but those happening simultaneously in the Garden Stage and the nightclub.
And welcome to the Monterey Fairgrounds for the 34th annual Monterey Jazz Festival. This is Bob Parlocha.
Stan Dunn.
And Tim Hodges.
We're off to a roaring start. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us here. We will be coming to you live all evening from the Monterey County Fairgrounds as the 34th annual Monterey Jazz Festival gets underway. Stan, paint a little picture of what you're seeing out our broadcast booth here at Stage Right.
Every year, of course, the festival has a little different decoration for the set on the stage, and this year has the mark 3-4 in the corner. It's 34 years of the Monterey Festival. Maybe the one thing that would love to be able to describe, you can't because it's about smells, and outside the air is just rich with the smell of barbecue sauce and spices and pork and beef and every other variation. There's a lot of other things, some interesting sweatshirts and T-shirts and clothing of all sorts and paintings of all sorts that are out for sale, sculpture, jewelry, the whole bit. I haven't seen the one really unusual item that you usually find here, but well, I'm sure that at some point or another we'll spot some strange thing that somebody's selling. That, what does this do?
The event reached not only KJAZ listeners, but people tuned into Carmel's KRML and to National Public Radio. Later, thanks to satellite broadcast, much of the rest of the world will be able to listen to this historic event. What they will hear is the best sound possible, since just 2 weeks earlier, KJAZ converted to digital sound, making it one of the very few radio stations in North America to be broadcasting a digital signal.
we're doing our own live mix here for the very first time in history for these broadcasts. And so we have 40 channels of audio in a mobile home that we've borrowed for the occasion. And we have our announce booth up at the top of the stage. And I also have another crew with the 24-channel board out making recordings at the Garden Stage and the nightclub stage. So
KJAZ recorded Madeline Eastman's Saturday Night at the nightclub to be played back later for KJAZ listeners.
The broadcast mix is a very different animal than a PA mix. There's the stereo imaging for one thing. In an acoustic space, there are always certain instruments that carry their own power. For example, especially in a small venue like a nightclub, you rarely mic a drum, for example, because drums are heard throughout the room, but you always would mic the bass and the piano because you want to be able to hear them throughout the room. So we mic everything, because if there aren't any microphones there, and even the smallest element of the drums, or I should say the loudest element of the drums, it's radio, and our audience is not going to hear it. So we approach it essentially as if we were making a CD quality recording. And as a matter of fact, now something like 5 of our recordings that we've done for the radio series that I do have ended up on CDs.
There's quite a large Japanese contingency here, not only as spectators, but also as performers. We have a couple of Japanese bands that we'll be hearing from over the course of the next couple of days.
Clarinetist Buddy DeFranco appeared with the Kitamura Quartet in the main arena.
I'm producing some of the broadcasts that are being recorded and played back at the next day. There's plenty to do and a lot of work involved, because we have to keep track of everything: the tune, the name of the tunes, the composers of the tunes, the length of the tunes, and have it all ready to perform on a playback basis. So we're editing right now for material that we recorded last night, which will be broadcast between the 2 shows today, between the blues show this afternoon and the evening jazz program. And actually this means that the people who are listening are getting a more complete picture of the Monterey Festival than the people who are actually here, because they cannot be here at 3 places at once, but we can.
Dressing room with Greg Bridges and Ruth Brown.
One of the many festival artists KJAZ interviewed was the great blues singer Ruth Brown.
Another crowd-pleasing set. You seem right at home in front of an audience. What does that do to you?
Well, I think that there is nothing that starts the professional adrenaline flowing as much as being able to look out and see real live faces and watch the changing of expressions. You know, and it's always interesting to see that perhaps when you first get to the stage, people who came together are occupying just their seat, but midway your performance, you start to notice that everybody starts to lean into somebody, you know, and kind of lean, and they get a little closer. So that's an indication that something has happened in your performance that has touched them a little bit emotionally.
Baby, 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 I got to have you for my own. Baby, 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 I got to have you for my own. If you ever leave me, baby, call me on the telephone. I want to love you, love you, love you. Love you all the time. I wanna love you, love you, love you. Love you all the time. I wanna love you, baby. If I live to 99, I'll give me 5, 10, 15 hours of your love.
Now, I find it easier to sing the songs that I sang in those years, again now, but with a different kind of approach. Because when I was a girl of 18 and 19, I had no idea what the lyrics meant, but I do now.
Well, you're one of our favorites, and I'd like to thank you for taking time out to stop and chat with us for a while. May your career keep on flourishing, and hopefully we'll see you again back in these parts real soon.
I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you. Well, yesterday I co-hosted co-anchored the blues segment of the show, which was being broadcast live, and then I'm here doing interviews for the rest of the festival, and I really like that. I really like being here. This is the 34th Monterey Festival, and this really is a part of history. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
In broadcasting the 34th Monterey Jazz Festival, KJAZ was bringing founder Jimmy Lyons' last year as director to festival fans. After 34 years, he's handing over the directorship to Tim Jackson, co-founder and director of the 17-year-old Kawumba Jazz Center in Santa Cruz.
And then next year's festival, Jimmy and I will produce together in the sense that he will book the Sunday night closing show and I'll book the rest of it. And then the whole festival itself will be dedicated to Jimmy.
The Monterey Jazz Festival is the oldest continuously operating or functioning jazz festival in the world. And even though we're undergoing a change now with our general manager, we hope to keep our basic, what really was Jimmy Lyon's basic theme alive, which is straight ahead mainstream jazz. That's going to be, I hope, our emphasis in the years to come. And I'm looking forward to those years. Well, we have enjoyed having KJAZ here this year. And I love hearing the Monterey Jazz Festival mentioned on their programs.
Another thing that I enjoy about this festival is that it's a miracle. It really, no one ever expected it to get to the point that it is now and be the massive success. And there were a lot of naysayers around who thought that the idea of a jazz festival was foolish and that it wasn't commercially acceptable or what, all the millions of stories that we've heard over the years. And it's just trudged on despite all of the negative thinking on behalf of all those other people. It's just been a success.
As a young musician growing up in Vallejo, and we heard about the Newport Jazz Festival, everything seemed to be going on in the East Coast. But when Jimmy opened this, just a wave of excitement through the entire crowd. And we were down here for the first one, and we were in hog heaven, so to speak. It was just absolutely wonderful.
The marriage between this jazz festival, the jazz festival, and a jazz station that has managed to stay afloat for 32 years is pretty natural. I think it's right, and it should have been all along. And I'm glad we're back together.
In the fall of every year, you're just playing it all by ear. And before you know it's here, it's time for Monterey. There's no scene, I mean nowhere, like that Razzma Jazz affair. If you want the lion's share, it's there at Monterey. Port and cool, Concord and Playboy. You wanna play, boy? Hey, play Monterey, boy. It's been 30 years or more since they opened up the store. From the gang that's gone before to those who